Welcome to Alumni Live, the podcast. These are conversations with Grand Valley State University film and video graduates about the industry, the film video major, and alumni profiles. Got a great conversation today with Kevin Kamerad and Gwen Troutman about their innovative multimedia children's educational programming, Wimee TV. Kevin and Gwen, how's it going?
Hey, doing just fine.
It's going great.
Great. Well, thank you for talking on Alumni Live. You are both alumni of Grand Valley. When did you graduate?
So I graduated in April of 2022, so pretty recent graduate.
I am the class of 1998, the old turn of the century. Is that a thing? Do people say that? I don't know. But
yeah. Turn of the millennium, right? It was we turned the whole thing over. And I graduated in 2012, so we've got multiple years here. Thanks for coming to talk to us. You're talking about Wimee TV. What is Wimee TV?
So Wimee TV, there's a whole backstory. So I'll first summarize what it is, and then we'll go back to the start. It is interactive, virtual, web-based, and on WGVU. It's got different time slots that we've done over the years. In essence, the goal, the passion, the focus is to create content that inspires kids to create, to want them to think of themselves as producers instead of consumers. And so we do it live. There's structure to it, but it's a lot of improv, the spontaneity where kids can see and understand that they're part of the process. Those episodes then that are experienced live become edited, and that gets then put into the structure of the PBS public television model, where these episodes can be viewed on a variety of PBS affiliates across the country. And that's the quick 101. Gwen, what do you add to that?
Wimee is a ton of things, Wimee TV specifically, but I think it is your best local television show for kids that you can watch in the Grand Rapids area, the Michigan area. It's super unique. It's different than any other kids show that you've ever watched because kids are actually helping create it as they watch it. And it's not just one of those call and response things where the character says something and then the kids at home say something. They actually get to see their answers on the television screen. And then Wimee talks back to them and it will reference them and their answers, and kids can feel heard and seen. And it's unlike any other television that you've ever experienced. So it's a really, really unique product.
So maybe I should have started with this question instead. Who is Wimee?
So Wimee is a lovable robot, and let me check if hey Wimee. Oh, no, that's Sibley. Step away. Oh, hey friends. What is going on, Sibley? Kevin? Oh wait, Randy? Gwen! Hi, Gwen! Oh man, are you guys doing a video podcast? What are you doing? We are talking about the show Wimee, and we were just talking about you. Oh my goodness! Well, why don't I talk a little bit? Tell you what, Wimee, I just wanted you to say hi. So why don't you just pause, and we'll let you come back later. So I am the puppeteer of Wimee. I always joke there's a fine line between creativity and multiple personalities and craziness and goofiness and I keep telling myself I got to stop saying that little line because I don't know, but it's fun. I guess my point with that, is it's a character, it's a robot, it's a puppet. There's illustrations, there's animations. It's the face of the Wimage app. And we can circle back to that too, that goes into the whole story of how we got to this point. But the idea is this robot as a puppet, I'll give you the visual. It's about 3.5 feet tall, pinkish and orangish and greenish teals and buttons that light up and glow. First was created as a character. It was built with model airplane wheels, a fruitcake can as a head, a box for the body, stool legs for arms. So it was built out of very physical, real things. That can kind of help you craft in your mind what it looks like, right? And basically then as a puppet, over the years, playing, developing the character, the personality, the soul of Wimee is always to celebrate creativity, creative thinking, wordplay. There's a lot of joy, there's a lot of laughter, there's a lot of spontaneity. So that's my take, I guess, on Wimee. Gwen, how does that connect to what you see in Wimee, or what did I miss?
No, you hit the nail on the head. Wimee he's like the combination of every character that you loved as a kid. He's a little bit goofy, a little bit silly. He loves to learn and explore and create. He's just the perfect combination of, I think, everything that a kid would want to watch. I know I would have loved watching. I do love watching Wimee now, but I know as a kid, I would have absolutely been glued to the television screen.
It's so cool. And I've met Wimee, actually. So I've been to one of WGVU's events before, and Wimee was performing there. Kevin was there. There was a dance party thing. So what is incredible about Wimee, you just see the kids light up. It's something where Kevin's standing there too, but all the eyes are just locked on Wimee. So how did that happen? Like, how do you create something that kids love so much, respond to, or learning from? Where does Wimee come from?
How would I answer that? I so far talked about kind of the visual description and then demonstrated his voice, right? And some of the concepts. How did it get to that point? There's a technical answer of just kind of what led to this particular character. I think the first answer to your question, though, is I should say this. Michael Hyacinth and I and Joe Emery together started that process of creating this character. Michael and I sat down with, like I said, that fruitcake can, the model airplane. Michael said, hey, let's make a robot named Wimee, which ties into the visual literacy app that he created called Wimage. And so as we were building these physical pieces, we then went to my friend Joe Emery, who's a puppet builder, and said, how do we go further? That's kind of the technical thing. But prior to all of that, I was an independent artist and puppeteer for about 20 years. So for me personally, when you ask or comment the observation of, the kids and the magic and the energy, like anything, right? The more you work at a craft, at an art form, the stronger you get at it. So I feel for me, over the years of traveling with different puppets, singing to kids in different ways. And what's interesting is over those 20 years, the first 10 years, when it came to puppetry, I had a puppet named Jacob, and the voice of the puppet, though, was recorded. A friend of mine, Andy Holtgrave, is the voice of that puppet. And so we recorded the songs. In fact, that was the origin, it was poetry to songs. And then it was, how do we bring these songs to life? Oh, what if we do it through puppetry? So the puppetry for me personally as an artist, that was the entry point, was how could we perform these songs and do different things? And so for many years, I basically told the audience what to do, wave your arms left and right, now do this, but it was not a back and forth relationship. So at some point, actually it was Art Prize of 2011 specifically, I was part of an exhibit, a piece where I started doing the first puppet where I was the voice. And I started to realize, oh man, this vulnerability of interacting with an audience is so much more fun, and there's so much more flexibility, and there's so much more spontaneity that you can do, but it's also more vulnerable. But I also never went the route of ventriloquism. It was just, I'm just going to go for it. And at the time I was in a puppet theater where you didn't see me. But then when you mentioned, right, here I am with the puppet. I don't try to be a ventriloquist because I personally don't feel for what I'm trying to do that is needed. I think the art of ventriloquism is amazing, but I think a lot of times people feel like they have to be a ventriloquist in order to work with a puppet in a performance or a classroom or any setting. So I build upon that, even saying to kids, yeah, they're puppets. This is what I do. Put your hand up in the air, bend your wrist, go la la la. And when you are open about the creative process with kids, they gravitate even that much more to want to do it themselves. But you're not trying to pull something over them. It's, this is what I'm doing. This is how you can do it. And so all that long-winded answer there also leads to now both the physical shows in person, but what we do through the television show, like Gwen was mentioning, how we interact and kids see, wait, I just interacted with this puppet through a camera now, and through the technology that allows that to happen. There's just such a synergy, such an energy. And I think I'd go back to just saying it's practice, it's intuition, it's doing it over and over and over. It's learning from others. I've learned from a lot of puppeteers and a lot of musicians, children's musicians, and I'm rambling a long time here, so I got to pause and just
You're doing great. So Gwen, it sounds like Wimee was created, right? So we've got Kevin, Michael, and Joe all working on creating this world, creating this character. Where do you come in? Like, when did you start working with this project, and how do you help breathe life into it?
So I had actually not heard of Wimee while I was a student at Grand Valley, which is crazy because Wimee is all over Grand Rapids. I have no idea how I missed it. It was probably one of those things where like I turned my head and they unfurled the banner behind me. Like it just felt like it had been there my whole life and I hadn't seen it. And I was working at WGBU as a production assistant. And I was always very vocal to everybody that someday I'm going to work in children's programming. I want to work in children's educational television. And everyone was like, yeah, okay, great. That's great. Good for you. But all of the people I worked with at WGBU listened to me and they were very receptive. And my boss, Sky, he was talking to me one day. He was like, we're going to go as a group and we're going to tour this studio with this local puppeteer. And I really think you should come because I think you're absolutely going to love it. And I was like, oh, sure. So I went with them that day and we went down to the Wimee studio/store, which wasn't even officially open yet, and went in and Kevin was there with Wimee and he just introduced himself and talked for probably like 20-30 minutes just back and forth. And I didn't say like a word. I was just in awe. I was immediately like a kid, just entranced. And I couldn't believe how cool this was and how it was here in Grand Rapids, and I'd never seen it before. So we went back to the studio and I told Sky, like, anytime you guys are working with him, I have to be there. I have to be on set. You have to let me be a part of this. And he did. And the first time that Kevin came in to record some stuff for the last season and the one that we're currently doing of Wimee, he was like, you need to come in today. Kevin is working in the studio and we need a camera person. I was like, absolutely. And that was it. I went in that day, had the most fun I'd ever had working on a set. And it was just Kevin and me and one other PA. And I had the most fun I'd ever had. And I told Sky, I need you to give me Kevin's email. I feel like I have to ask him if he needs any help, if he needs somebody to create content for him. And sure enough, Kevin responded really quickly. Then I met Michael. And from there, I basically just asked, can I come work for you? And they said yes. And that was last April. And it's been an amazing whirlwind ever since.
That is the viewers or the listeners can't see right now, but I've got just this huge smile on my face because that is dreams coming true, right? Like, that is incredible. And like, just to connect some dots here, right? You are a student at Grand Valley. Kevin, is an alumnus of Grand Valley. You've both graduated. WGVU is the public media station, PBS, NPR, housed on the campus of Grand Valley State University, putting out this show, creating it. It's alumni working together in this public media station at Grand Valley. How has Grand Valley played into your careers, like creating this show, creating the artist that you are today?
I'll summarize it for me that I went to Grand Valley from 94 to 98, was a student studying film and video production. And as I was there, I started exploring children's poetry, which then turned into music and independently publishing books. When I talk about that traveling world and circuit of schools and libraries and performances with puppets, it was connected to books and songs. I ironically kind of left the film and video world, so to speak. Ironically now has full circle came back to the video aspect, the multimedia aspect. What I learned, the root of being a student at Grand Valley was, how do I access technology, tools, video, partnerships, collaborations? How do you work with people to create it? And I also did some corporate work. I worked at GRTV for a while, videotaped weddings, etc. But my experience of being a student there, in fact, very specific teachers too. My English class, Cynthia Simpson, the English 150, I think it was. I remember realizing how much fun creative writing could be. And a story making class from Margaret Proctor was the professor of that class, and Deanna Morse and Suzanne Zach, actually, who's connected to this whole experience here. Nonlinear digital editing was just coming out, and it was like one of the first times I think they offered. At the time it was the decks, right? And the AB insert 1, 2, or that might have been a Nintendo code or something there too, but AB up, down, left, right. But just the change in the technology, right? But the creative process of creating, of doing, of partnering. So that's my quick answer. And now to circle back. In fact, I remember taking media, I forget the exact class, but Phil Lane was one of the guys connected to that class in the fall of 94 or spring of 95. Well, guess who we're working with right now at WGVU of one of the people? It's Phil Lane. So how amazing is that connection? And I'll also say real quick, right after I graduated, it was about 6 months later, I met my now wife, Stephanie. We've been married 22 years. Her degree is in special education from Grand Valley State University. And it was a professor at Grand Valley who connected us. That's how we met, was a Grand Valley professor, Liz Story. So the School of Education. And over the years, too, I've been at a lot of the different things that Grand Valley has done, the Celebrate Literacy conferences, different programs and workshops that things have happened. So lots of Grand Valley connection. Then, like Gwen said, there we are in the studio one day. And I want to say this real quick, too, circling back. When Gwen reached out, I was so glad she did. and just been amazing with her, the balance of what she can do technically, but also understanding the children's media focus and the purpose of what we're doing. But she challenges us to say, why don't we do this instead? This could be better. She has a great balance of technical and creative, theatrical, and singing. And her ukulele's coming out soon.
Uh-oh.
There's workshops that she and my wife Stephanie do with preschoolers in Grand Rapids right now. And I'm rambling again, but your Grand Valley connection story.
Yeah, I was Grand Valley from 2018 to 2022, and I also had Suzanne Zach as a professor, which was wonderful. I got to have her 2 separate times, and the final one was in Capstone, and I felt like my professors had all been really encouraging as me becoming a producer and learning how to edit, all of the skills, but I feel like Suzanne was the first one who listened to me when I said, I want to work in children's educational programming, and she helped me to reach out and talk with people who've created television shows before, or inspired me to reach out to people and be brave and ask to do interviews and things like that. And getting to hear from people who had done it, getting to hear from people who are in the industry made me realize only even more that I wanted to. And what it made me realize even more was that the only way I was going to be able to do this was if I asked the right questions, if I asked the right people. As long as I continue to be vocal about my wants for my career, I feel like someone will listen and someone will be able to help me. And that's exactly what Sky did at WGVU. I wanted to work at WGVU because the long-term goal for me, I'd love to work at PBS Kids someday. I think that would be amazing. And I was like, well, the closest thing to that is PBS right here in Grand Rapids. And I'm sure I can do some amazing things there. And I did get to, and I got to work with amazing people and make the best connections and grow my skill set so much more even outside of Grand Valley. And Sky did listen, and he helped me to find Wimee. And I was brave enough to ask the questions and take my shot. And I'm so glad that I did. And now it's all connected again. And we're working really closely with WGBU. And I love all the people who work there and just being in there. And just the idea that we get to film a show with them in collaboration. It feels already full circle, like a tiny little circle. I started there and just keep coming back around. It's really a big part of my life, which is amazing.
Yeah. And I hear so much of my own experience in the stories that both of you have told. I also started working at WGVU as a student, eventually graduated, worked there, started my own company, things like that. And I worked for Detroit Public Television. And it's like WGVU being a place that Grand Valley students can even work at was such a creative incubator. The fact that it's part of the campus and a place that's open to students, I can't explain enough what a great place that has been to work. I just feel how much you both love this work. What is it? Can you put that into words? I hear you talking about Wimee. I hear you talking about the effect it's having on students, and I can see it on your faces, but what is it about this work that you love the most?
For me, it's all the above. My brain is wired to create, to make things, to express things, but not only to express things, but to have a relationship with who it's intended for. When I started with poetry and music and puppetry, when I finally realized the shift, my friend just Jim, actually, there's so many people that are part of this show, and we've alluded to some of it. So while I'm on that real quick, I just want to mention Michael Hyacinth, who started it all, right? They got the ball rolling, and then he and I and Stephanie, we kind of went from doing things in person to this virtual world, and it was a result specifically of COVID, is what launched it. And now 4 years later, here we are. But Jim Dagg, who also has a band called Scribble Monster out of the Chicago area, is a huge part of this show, and we can hopefully circle back to more about him. But in the context of what I'm thinking right now is he's shared this analogy in the past with me that just struck such a chord, that as an artist, as you perform in person or interact with whatever the setting is, if you want to play a game and you want to play catch, right, you got to throw it to the other person and they have to throw it back to you. And so that's why it's fun, is you're in this relationship of back and forth. If you're just throwing these baseballs at kids or an audience, or no one's playing catch with you, they're just dodging from you, right? Well, that's a very different experience. And so I love that metaphor of just playing catch with a kid, with an audience, with a family, with a huge group or a small group, or in this case, a virtual show. That how big that interaction level is depends on the technology and the details of all that. But for me, that's where I just love to live and breathe, is that vulnerability of that relationship. And a lot of structure goes into that, right? We have a very specific plan of what we're going to do, yet there's so much improv built in. Kind of the yes and concept of improv, right? And the musicality and the playfulness is seeing the energy, the synergy, those moments where what is happening can only happen because of the sum of all parts. The joy, the laughter, the fun. For me to be able to combine puppetry with music, with collaboration, with wordplay, this just deeply resonates to be able to do this and have the opportunity to do it.
I love learning. I just love the act of learning. I love learning new information about all kinds of subjects, and I've always been that way. I'm a big nerd. I'll always admit it. I love documentaries. I love watching behind the scenes stuff. I just love knowing things. And I think, my parents helped foster that, and the school district that I was in was wonderful, but I got it a lot from the television shows that I watched growing up. I watched a lot of PBS Kids growing up, and I just loved all of it. And I especially loved the ones where there was puppets involved or mixed media or other elements that really engaged me and kept me interested and kept me wanting more. And how did they do that? How is that happening? It's so cool. And as I grew up, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Like most people, I jump back and forth between lots of things, but I always knew that I loved learning and I wanted to work it into my career someday, somehow. I knew I didn't really want to be a teacher, but I knew I wanted to help foster that love of learning and education in others, especially kids. I think that's my favorite part, is that every day that I'm creating stuff for Wimee or working on the show, I am hopefully helping some kid out there realize that they love learning too, and that they want to keep learning and they want to go off and become a doctor or a lawyer or become a teacher or a farmer or whatever brings them joy, whatever lights them up inside, because what lights me up inside is giving that opportunity to others. It's so sweet and exciting, and no, I just love every single second of it.
That's so cool. I'm so glad I got to hear that right now. That's awesome. This episode is brought to you by the Chuck Peterson Memorial Fellowship. The fellowship was established by Chuck Peterson's family and friends to assist upper-level students in the film and video program at GVSU who are working on creative projects that support the nonprofit sector in their community. Kyle Machame, the 2020 recipient of that fellowship, describes the benefits of the support he received.
When going through this fellowship, there are 3 separate parts of yourself that I think get to experience a lot of development. The first is as a student, because this is a learning process. You get to learn how to work with the client on your own, independently out in the world, away from the classroom like you would in something like producing for clients. And the second one would be as a video maker, as a video producer, as someone who has respect for the work that they're doing and wants to improve on themselves and produce a final product that can be used out in the real world. And then the third one would be as a citizen. You know, you're not making video for an entertainment value or for some kind of commercial purpose. It's for a nonprofit. It's for a direct benefit in your community. And being a citizen of that community, understanding how you can directly impact and improve it, is a really valuable experience that I think the fellowship teaches you to be as a student, as a filmmaker, and as a citizen. All 3 of those things are directly a part of this process that you get to learn and ask yourself, how do I want to be seen and how do I want to act as these 3 roles?
For more information and to donate to the scholarship, visit the link in the description. Now back to the show. So we're talking a lot about education, we're talking about creating things, but let's also talk about filmmaking, right? So storytelling, let's talk about the format of the show. How do you put together a story? How do you convey who this character is? What are some of the nuts and bolts that a film student listening to this might want to know more about?
Yeah, I think it'd be fun, Gwen, for us to give the structure of the show and the technology and the format of how we do that and the process. And I think you'll also notice as we chat about this that you'll see it's pretty much bare bone concept. And part of that is just a reflection of technology these days. It's very different. You don't need a full blown television studio, right? But we'll get into the very specific of an episode. But I think what got us to this point, too, makes sense to give a little bit of that background. So Michael, who started the app Wimage, which is meant to be words to images, said, let's create this character Wimee, right? And so we were using the app, which is you input a word, you see an image, you change the color, you can make it size bigger, smaller, you add layers, you can create a composition from word to word to word and design. And really cool concept of let's visualize thoughts and create something with this resource, this tool. So we then started going into schools doing workshops where we would use the app, use the puppet, create a song, play with songs, different concept. It eventually led to creating the first book. That created the groundwork to the concept of what we were trying to do, to inspire kids to create things visually, to play, to have fun, to create an environment that kids are excited about. So when COVID shut everything down, we were in the middle of doing a whole district-wide kind of thing. PNC Grow Up Great was funding it, etc. And we, at first, just put on the camera with Wimee, the robot, this puppet, right? It was simply Facebook. It was simply hit go live. And here I am. In fact, Wimee, do you want to share? Wait a minute. Okay. Oh, yeah. I remember. Yeah, the camera was on. And I was just like, hey, friends, what should we talk about? And then people would post comments. And then I would see them. And then we'd be like, oh, yeah, let's sing. And we'd do these songs. And we would just sing a song like down by the bay, right? And then they would say frog. And I'd go like, oh, yes. Did you ever see a frog who started to jog? What's another animal? And then we'd wait for the comment. And I'd go, oh, so-and-so, because I could call him out and say, whale, thank you. Okay, did you ever see a whale? Right? So again, these pattern-based concepts, right, of songs and wordplay and interactivity. And so now fast forward, right, from just one camera and a puppet. Sorry, Wimee, I'm going to take over. Okay. So we then from there said, okay, how do we improve this? How do we go further? This is where now we can get into a technical thing. A friend of mine who performs under the name Uno Dos Tres Andres, he and his wife Christine are incredible musicians and they're absolutely amazing. And we're fortunate to know them. And when they saw this little live thing we were doing, it's like, oh, you got to use StreamYard. So for those of you who know what StreamYard is, you're going to go, yes. For those of you saying, what is StreamYard? Think of it as like right now we're on Zoom, right? Facilitating this broadcast. There's Teams, there's Google Meet, there's all these different platforms, right? StreamYard is meant to be not like all these cameras come on and everybody controls their view and, and the mic, like you got to mute your microphone, come on, right? That kind of scenario. It creates basically an online virtual television broadcast system. It's a structure that allows, okay, different cameras, we can put in video clips, we can put in music tracks, we can put in images. Basically now, that platform, we started figuring out how do we start putting this into segment to segment to segment and develop the little video, the pre-roll intro, the graphic, the overlay, in essence, start to build the show. Gwen, why don't you kind of fast forward to where we're on now in the structure? You're the one behind the scenes running, okay, this, do this, and I just get to sit there with the puppet and make some ruckus.
Yeah, it's very similar for anyone who's ever been inside of a television studio or maybe just seen one. They have those giant switcher boards. It's very much like that, but way more streamlined, a lot easier to learn, and you don't accidentally hit the wrong button unknowingly and broadcast something live to the air. You know exactly what you're looking at with StreamYard. And so Kevin will be back there with the puppet, and then I'm sitting 5 feet away from him at the table with Stephanie, and we're both running different parts of it. My main job is to pull in the different segments and to record the show, and then we use the Wimage board live during the show. And so as Kevin creates this 3-sentence story with Wimee, I will put it up on the screen and I'll animate it, and it'll be super fun, and we do all of that live. What we're doing right now is we have like this little tiny television studio basically all inside of our computers that we're using in our studio downtown. We then send that to WGVU, and they take that and they air that all over their broadcast radius.
One thing I'll add in real quick too is there was a lot of conversations and trust established before. I love how you say that, Gwen, like, oh yeah, they just threw it up on the air and here we go. And Phil's probably listening like, no, that's not, don't start saying, right? But we did actually like 300 to 400 episodes on Facebook and YouTube, and the way StreamYard kind of allows you to send the signal to different platforms. We ultimately had to use Facebook and YouTube and different things because that was the only option for the interactivity. Well, what happened was, and this is a good time, I think, to mention a partnership with Josh Freeney and the different organizations and companies that he's part of. Also, I want to mention Kent District Library is a huge part of this. There's so many people involved in this process. I work for Kent District Library as a bookmobile operator and in the outreach. And when we launched this during COVID, the partnerships of how all these pieces work together, as we were kind of just figuring out how do we serve our community, the people that we're working with, interacting with, how do we do this, and how can that spread into other projects that we're doing, other resources and videos and projects and summer reading, and we had a business expo thing we did for a while, right? Kind of learning this process. And as we were continuing to build, we started saying to Phil at WGVU, what could this look like? And when Gwen mentioned the broadcast studio, so to speak, is in a computer, when Mark, one of the engineers at WGVU, was brought into the equation of, okay, we want to explore how could we do this? His first question was, well, where's your master output video signal, the cord, like where HDMI, what are you sending? Where's your master output? And we said, well, there is none. Like, well, what are you talking about? You're doing this multi-camera live production thing. Like, send me the master out. We got to get it into this. And he had a conversion box that when they go out and do live, like they have a truck, right, that goes out and does live production, and they send the signal as the master output. And I kept saying, well, there is no master output. It's just this StreamYard.com/1275. Like, it's like, well, that's not going to work. And that's where Josh Freeney and his resources and team, we figured out there's a huge learning curve. And Josh very specifically was the one to say, I think I know how this can work. Was this middle person to say, okay, if we go from StreamYard to this third-party thing, which involves servers, which involves this, and then I guess kind of over my head what he did is why I'm just like servers and some computers and enter some numbers and right. But Mark and Josh were the ones that worked a long time to figure this out. But then the reality was it's working. And it involved also a box over at their end with WGVU and how it came in. But then the other thing too, a big thing was there has to be live captioning. There's a lot of technical rules, right? And it's good, but it's, okay, how do we do this? And so once all this trial and error in figuring out how this could work and trying some other things in addition to what we landed on. And so when we first launched it last fall, everything was web-based for like 2.5, 3 years. And this was the first time saying, and by the way, I should say those web-based episodes would become edited, which would then be sent to WGVU, different stations in Michigan and other parts of the country, as well as then exploring larger distribution channels of how digital content can get distributed to public television. So it was expanding through the PBS world, but as recorded content, still based on live content, but recorded. So the question of how do we go live opened up a huge can of worms. And so when we first did it, we didn't announce it. We didn't say anything because we didn't know if it was going to just completely fail. Because we also had to figure out, okay, going to you live and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you're live, and then you're out. Because we never had a time limit of you have to be done at 26 minutes and 42 seconds, right? Because it goes to the next thing. It was just a big learning curve. And again, the synergy of all the people trying to do this. And after the first episode, when we finished live, we all kind of paused and like, did it work? And so then we continued doing the live ones. And now we're returning to do another set of live episodes. And so we're going to continue to expand it and learn from each other and learn where it's all going to go. And, it takes a lot of energy and sponsorship and funding. And it's a big can of worms to how to really do this.
Gwen, two main themes that I just heard Kevin talk about are about a lot of learning curves, and I heard him talk a lot about collaboration. So to me, some of the biggest lessons that I learned from Grand Valley were just how to learn, how to be curious, and how to work with other people that might know some of those answers. Can you talk to that? Like, what were some scenarios and classes? What were some lessons that you brought that really helped you do what you do and create this new format for TV?
I think that's one of the things that the Grand Valley Film Program does really, really well is putting you in lots of situations where you're learning how to collaborate with all sorts of different people and you're problem solving constantly. And they don't throw you in the deep end and say, here you go. But a little bit, they're like, you need to go off and learn how to do this, and we'll be there to help you if you need us. But a lot of classes, I think the first taste of that was Media 2. They kind of start letting you do projects on your own, but they pair you up with random people and you're like, I don't know if we're going to work together. And then it just keeps getting bigger. And through the doc classes and Fiction 1 and Fiction 2, you're creating whole films, sometimes feature length or short, and you're doing things you've never done before. You're trying to you're getting permissions for these things. You're figuring out what kind of cameras, what kind of lighting, and can I even do this? Can I make this vision come to life? Because everybody in the Grand Valley Film Program likes to dream big. Like that's one of the things we're best at. And so we all dream big together. And then we step back and we're like, oh, how do we make that happen? And you want to make it happen for each other because you've spent all this time growing and collaborating and making friends and making these film groups together. And so you want to realize those dreams and see them come to life. And I see that in Wimee all the time. We have lots of things that I've never even thought could be possible that we're doing with television and with programming. And we have big dreams, but it doesn't stop us from coming up with big solutions. We're really endlessly creative, and that's because of all of the amazing partners and the sponsors and all of the really cool people that we get to work with. But I definitely don't know if I would have the grit or the want to keep solving those problems if I hadn't been put in very similar situations when I was in college.
Yeah. Kevin, I was hearing you talk a little bit about like pattern-based learning, things like that. Like how much does research play into what you're doing? How much are you learning about how kids learn and how to research at Grand Valley? How do you go about making sure
that's
this
a
is
perfect
helping?
setup for talking about Stephanie. My wife has her degree in special education from Grand Valley, and so she is the backbone to the educational aspects, combined with KDL staff, librarians. Kalaine Mish is also part of the educational aspect. Jim, who I mentioned as a fellow colleague and performer, and he's part of the show on camera as well. And his wife has a doctorate in education. And so all of us just have a lot of experience in different ways that we bring to the table. And when we don't know things, we look up curriculums, we look up things with partners in Kent County, the Great Start Collaborative, First Steps Kent, the Head Start of Kent County. We're always interacting and engaging. And I think Kent District Library in particular, in the librarians, the sum of all the parts, but specifically Stephanie, for me, is usually my first go-to, or she is the one who runs a lot of these things to begin with. It's rooted in experience and knowledge. And we reach out to ask for help when we are in over our head. One thing that I think that ties into this is we kind of started to go here when it talks about the actual show. When you talk about education, we start every show with what's called a pattern-based song. So it's like Down by the Bay that I was singing earlier. We've just established a structure that we know works, and we have the curriculum connections to what we're doing and why. Once it's been established, we then build upon those concepts. We haven't finished this yet, but we're getting close to having what we call an Explore More with Wimee page. So the concept is that not only are you interacting with these pattern-based songs, the 3-sentence story that Gwen alluded to earlier, we write a story with a beginning, a middle, and end. Set the scene in the first sentence, there's a problem in the second, and then a solution in the third. So it's showing and expressing the story writing process, the arc, which is very relevant to filmmaking when he talked about that aspect and like, how do you craft a story? How do you write the script? So we kind of boil it down to just beginning, middle, and end. And we do that every episode. So hopefully kids experiencing that not only see their ideas in the story, if they're part of the 3 words that are chosen, they just have it built into them, that concept. And then we do things like the alphabet game where we just think of words that start with a certain letter. Very standard concepts, but done in a playful, quirky, fun way.
Gwen, as film people, right? Like, we're a little bit techie. Can you kind of go through, like, what are some of the cameras you're using? What does your studio look like out there in Wimee world?
So, you go into a television studio that they have these big, amazing, giant cameras that are like hooked into the walls and there's wires and everything. We actually use 2 very nice webcams. Those are our main cams that we use for our show, and we've tried using other cameras before, and what we've actually found is that we can't get that same really fun, loving quality that we can with these very specific webcams that we have been using. And then Kevin has a microphone that he, like you'll see on some puppeteers, he'll tape to his head and he'll wear a hat so it stays in place. And it's a very nice, but it's a very tiny, tiny little microphone, but it picks up great audio. And his is really the only audio that we need because we get all the rest of it from inside of StreamYard. So we have a very basic setup, but what we're able to accomplish with it is amazing. And it's television quality. It's shown on television all over the country. And it's really funny to think that, you go from the studio with these giant big cameras down to these little tiny ones. And I've worked with cameras of every size in between, but these ones are helping deliver the kind of quality show that we want. Even though they're not maybe as high tech as some of the other stuff we've used, it's exactly what the show needs to be successful. So I'd never worked with webcams a lot before this, but I've learned a lot as we've learned how to adjust them and make them look the best that we possibly can.
I think I'd piggyback on that real quick too. The more light you flood on something, right, without overexposing it, obviously, but there's just lights, aimed on these puppets. So the webcam, because of the lighting as well, piggybacking together, and with it being one basic shot with the colorful background and desk, we don't need super great cameras. We may expand more cameras or more shots or more angles. And I think what I was going to say also was, just because the world that we now live in, the concept of interactiveness and Zoom and meetings and stuff, there's just a different aesthetic was also accepted in a way it wasn't, 10, 20 years ago. And like Gwen said, the cameras pull off what we need them to pull off. But also I think what I'm referring to is just the structure of the show itself. Being a live variety show concept, it's just different. I think subconsciously you understand what we're doing requires the internet and live cameras going back and forth and engaging in a way that is different from watching a studio production we think of from the past.
I'm sitting here just so fascinated by all of this. You are creating the coolest things. We're kind of heading towards the end here. Let's jump into the time machine real quick and go back to as you are now, right? So right now you're successful, you're creating incredible media, people across the state, across the country talking about how cool this is. Going back, talking to yourself, as a freshman in college, starting out at Grand Valley, what advice do you have? What encouragement do you have? Like, what do you say to young Gwen, to young Kevin?
I think one of the big ones for me is I wouldn't get to be working with the amazing people I work with now or creating the wonderful things that I get to create if I hadn't been brave and asked if I could be a part of that team. I could have just worked with that one environment or wherever he came in and really enjoyed it and enjoyed that part of it, but I knew there could be more if I tried. And I would encourage any single person who thinks that they may have a shot at something if only they just asked, if only they just took their shot. Absolutely 100% do it. Networking is huge and it's important and it's wonderful. And because I was able to make those connections with WGVU and everybody, I was introduced to Kevin. But there's an extra step after that. Once you meet everybody, once you have all the numbers and the names, you have to ask for what you want. You have to reach out to those people, those connections that you've made, and see what they can help you do. And if you have made a good enough connection with them, hopefully they can help you and move on with your career and experience amazing things. So I would just tell her to work hard and learn how to collaborate and try a little bit of everything. And then once you're comfortable, even when you're uncomfortable, ask for what you want and see what they're able to give you.
I love how you said that, Gwen. And, it was the perfect connection, too, because we could have been at a place where we just didn't have capacity, but it was actually, tell us more about you. We want to see what you do and what you offer. It's the combination of, yes, seeking out and also knowing that you will get no's along the way, but to not then give up and or to circle back or to follow up. I think the persistence of following up. And now, obviously, too, as you started working with us and we keep saying like, oh, Gwen could do this and this, you're proving how much you're capable of. You're just making it so much better with what we're doing. Just don't give up. Keep going, which, connects to what Gwen said, too. Just put yourself out there. But it doesn't mean it's easy and simple and everything's all rolling along smoothly. One thing, I want to answer your question. Also, I think this goes back to surrounding yourself with people in the collaborative team. Michael, when he started all this and where it's at now, is mind-boggling. In very much in the creative mode, much more than the business entrepreneur logistics mode. And so Michael pursues that and is pursuing the bigger things and the next things. And as I'm surrounded by Kent District Library and Josh and people and Phil and the studio, WGVU, collaboration is so key. I was able to graduate from Grand Valley, go for it, independently try to make things work. Lots of struggling, lots of challenges in life and all the pieces right, but you just keep going and you keep knowing when to pivot. It's to just not give up, to keep going, connect with people that add to what you offer, that think differently than you do, because having the different perspectives, the different skills, the different characteristics that they bring to the table just make things better.
Well, check this out. So we're not live in the same way that Wimee's live, so I don't have that on-screen interaction like you do for your show, but I do have an on-screen chat here from Suzanne, who was your former professor. And she says here, the thing about Kevin is that he was different than other students. He was creating outside the box, which takes courage, and that he makes it happen. He trusted himself. I mean, it sounds like you were making projects back when you were in school that were getting the green light from inside of you. And it sounds like the projects you're doing now, you're still giving yourself the green light. And what is the value in that? Where does that drive even come from?
I think for me, the creative process combined with the internal desire to put yourself out there, whether it's applying for a job or creating your own path, it comes down to trusting your instinct, trusting who you are, trusting what you're trying to do, knowing that it is incredibly hard and the days are going to be fruitful that feel overwhelming and frustrating.
But there is something to that, though, right? Who else could have made this show? Who else could have created Wimee? It's not that you were trying to make something else that was out there. Like, you weren't trying to make that chase scene. You were making...
I think if you trust your instinct and you think big and you go for it and you surround yourself with diverse thinking, people that think similar and different to you and have different personalities and skills and traits, when you trust your instinct and you surround yourself by a variety of people and you just keep going, you sometimes look back and go, wow, we're here, we're doing this. And there's always going to be it could be so much bigger. Like, you look and you think, oh, it could be 1,000 times bigger. But yet this is where it's at. And to be grateful, to be in the moment, to keep it in perspective, and just day by day, just keep going. That's what I'm ultimately trying to do each day.
Question just came to my mind. So much of the world seems to be expanding outward. The world seems to be getting smaller. Shows are becoming more national, more international. And yet local television, especially local public broadcasting, is something that's very strong. Let's talk a little bit about local versus big time. Like, what can you do locally?
Yeah, with what we're doing with the show, we very specifically have been partnering with the John Ball Zoo, with the Grand Rapids Children's Museum. We have rotating segments on the show, and we have the very specific segments. But one of the rotating ones is called Kid Chat, and we record it at the Children's Museum. And so we want to continue that concept, and we want to continue creating more concepts where we very intentionally call out here in Grand Rapids as a local show that is viewed on a larger scale, but we want people here to know they can be part of it. Like, they have the opportunity through the website, just reaching out to us. People can find us and say, hey, how could we be part of this? As we're creating the show, people will recognize things from the Grand Rapids community. They'll know they can go downtown in Grand Rapids here on Ottawa Avenue, where this actual studio is, the store. You can come and be part of it. So we try to be where the local community can be part of it, and we then can represent our community to the world, right, who's watching it and interacting. And we want to continue to be able to do things in person, performances that are in person. There's a mascot of Wimee, the puppet of Wimee, the workshops Gwen and Steph go out into right now, and they're going into Grand Rapids Public Preschools, doing things with the Wimee character, with technology, with the Wimage board. So it is very much rooted and based here, and we plan to keep it that way. And as it expands too, with different segments we could do, who knows, like, we're talking about everything where it's at right now, but where is it going to be in 6 months, in a year, right? That's the thing we were kind of talking about. Like, look, what is possible? We don't know what's possible in a few months from now. And the whole AI world, right? That is something also we're stepping into, and a whole new partnership that's unfolding there. And so we want to respond to what the community wants, I think, right? If some organization reached out and said, hey, could we do this? We're going to do everything we can to say, let's explore it.
What are you seeing? Like, are you seeing that happen with local Grand Rapids kids?
Yeah, we, like Kevin was talking about, we'll go out in the community and do kid chats and things. And some of those kids have never heard of Wimee before, but we had a couple who were really big Wimee fans, and they heard about this open call to come and be a part of the show, and they came, and it was amazing. And we have kids who come into the studio sometimes who they know who Wimee is. They already have Wimee on their shirt. They're holding the Wimee plush in their hand. It's part of their lives. They read the books, they watch the show, they interact. And it's crazy to me that we're making something that when I was little, it's like meeting Blue's Clues. Like, if Blue's Clues lived downtown from you, that's what I imagine it feels like for some of these kids. It's crazy. They're meeting something that is so influential in their lives. I don't think sometimes we think how big Wimee probably is in some of these kids' lives, in their world, and how often they think about it, and how much they will think about it as they continue to grow up, and the little things that they'll pull from it and hopefully will use as they grow into the amazing people that they're going to become. I think it's really special, and I think only local television can give you that kind of feeling and that kind of experience that feels very homegrown, but also very expandable and relatable worldwide.
Hey, we got new season of Wimee coming out. He said March 1st, right? Get in the chat, ask Wimee some questions, participate. I recommend any of the students listening to this to watch Wimee.
Thank you,
from your
Randy. This has
childhood.
been so
It's
much
very cool.
fun. And Gwen, so fun to be working with you over this last year and how this whole adventure's going.
Well, you both and the whole team are just doing incredible work, and I am just so glad to have gone to the same university as both of you. So thank you so much.
Very kind. Thank you, Randy. This was fun. Let's do it again.
Thank you, Randy.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Alumni Live, the podcast. Subscribe to our podcast to hear more from our alumni across the industry. Check out Alumni Live on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube for more conversations and networking. Let us know what topics you want to hear our alumni talk about. The Grand Valley State University Film Video Alumni Network is here for you, and we're glad that you're here. Thank you for listening.